Commander King here with a review about how to draw molecular structures. So I've got this compound SiH4 here, and I want to draw what that might look like in terms of bonding. I want to know how it might share its electrons. So the first thing I always want to do is to kind of figure out how many valence electrons I'm dealing with. In other words, how many electrons do I have to reconfigure and bond for these elements or these atoms. And so I know, okay, I know Si is in the 14th column of my periodic table, so it has 4 valence electrons. I'm going to just sketch it like these because that's what Si kind of tends to do. And now I have 4 hydrogen atoms that have 1 electron each. Okay, so I count out my valence electrons. I see 4 on the Si, 4 on each of, or sorry, 1 on each of the H's, and so I know I have 8 valence electrons that can move around and form different bonds between my elements. All right, the second thing I want to do now is I know I have 8 valence electrons, and I want to think about, okay, generally how are these elements or atoms going to combine? So I'm going to draw something called the skeleton, or the skeletal structure. The skeletal structure is just the most basic drawing that I can make that connects this Si with these H's. So I have my Si, and I know it's going to bond with my H's. So whenever I draw a bond, I just make this line. And remember, each bond, okay, this represents 2 electrons that are being shared by the elements. So in this example, the Si is sharing 2 electrons with this H, and I'm thinking, hey, Si is probably the center of each of these. All right. Now, one thing I forgot to mention up here is that just looking at my Si structure, I see there are 4 dots, and I see kind of there are 4 different places that it could bond to. In other words, for Si to be completely happy, it would want another electron here, one here, one here, and one here to get its octet, to get those 8 outer electrons. So I know Si is probably going to bond to 4 other things, so I'm going to put a 4 here. And I also know that H wants only 2 outer electrons, H being one of the few elements that are okay with fewer than 8 valence electrons because it's in the first ring, only wants 2 electrons in its outer ring. So I know these are only going to bond to 1 other element. And so, okay, I see this. Now, once I have that, what I want to do with my skeletal structure is to check whether the elements are stable or happy. So check the octet rule. We know elements are stable or happy generally when they have 8 outer electrons. So I'm counting my Si here. I know each bond has 2 shared electrons, so the Si has 2, 4, 6, 8 electrons around it. So that makes this Si very happy. H, on the other hand, you might think, hey, it's only sharing 1 bond, which means that 2 electrons. But remember, H is one of the few elements that's happy with 2 outer electrons since it's in the first ring. So all of these are happy. And so I've checked my octet rule, and the other thing I want to check is that did I use up all my valence electrons? So did I use up all my valence electrons? And if we take a look here, we see, okay, there's this bond, which is 2 electrons, this bond is 2 electrons, this bond is 2 electrons, this bond also 2 electrons, so I have 2, 4, 6, 8 electrons. That's how many I put in. So yes, I've used up. If all those things check out, I'm done. This is my final structure. Okay. All right. So, yeah.